Muchas gracias, Raúl. Nos da mucho gusto presentarles al maestro Bill Aulet, director del Centro de Emprendimiento de MIT. Él está ahí desde el 2010. Durante el tiempo que Bill ha estado frente al centro, ha diseñado e implementado numerosos programas innovadores que van desde cursos para los estudiantes del MIT hasta aceleradoras de negocios. Bill también tiene una amplia trayectoria como emprendedor. Previo a su posición en MIT, Bill trabajó por más de 25 años como emprendedor, levantando fondos por más de 100 millones de dólares. Algunas de estas empresas han recibido reconocimientos por la innovación de sus productos en foros y publicaciones como el Wall Street Journal y Business Week. En abril de este año, Bill recibió el premio Adolf Monosson por el programa de mentoría en MIT y acaba de publicar su libro de Disciplined Entrepreneurship. Demos un fuerte aplauso a Bill Aulet.
Thank you. Me llamo Guillermo Aulet. No hable español. I'm sorry, I can't speak as fast or as eloquently as the last speakers, or in Spanish. But what I'm going to talk about is something that I hope all you young people are interested in. How many of you are interested in being entrepreneurs here today? That is so fantastic. And the rest of you, what do you want to be? Economists? Let me tell you what an economist is. An economist is someone who was really good at math, but didn't have enough charisma to become an accountant. So I won't tell them to give it up. But there's another alternative. It's called entrepreneurship. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It is, it's something that I was an entrepreneur. I graduated from university. Well, first of all, I got to tell you, this is very funny to come here to ITAM because the leaders from ITAM came up to visit me at MIT, and I didn't know about ITAM. And then they started telling me about it, and Pedro Aspe and all these great people. And I was like, wow, that's an amazing place. And ITAM is an amazing place. So I came down, I expected to see this enormous school. And I saw this little school, and it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing how many people you produce out of this school. So congratulations. ITAM is a really fantastic place, and I am really honored to be here on this day because I think you're going to look back, and today is going to be a transformational day in that you now have a center that will provide mentorship, that will provide academics, that will provide training, and will change the culture here to make it more advantageous for entrepreneurs. And all those things are critically important, and I'll talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I've got a presentation, and I'm going to go through part of it, but what I want to do is just talk about what you're interested in. So if you have a question or something, just put your hand up and go through it. The first thing I want to talk about that actually is on, there's a buzzing sound, is that me? Is that me? Do I need this? The funny thing is, I'm from New York, and I thought I spoke really fast, and then I just heard those speakers. Fernando, you're like on 78 RPMs. Okay, so what I want to talk about is what's going on in entrepreneurship. I don't think this works. Can you try this and see if we can get this to work? So let's talk about entrepreneurship. How many of you think entrepreneurship can't be taught? Let's be honest. Can entrepreneurship be taught or not? Raise your hand if you think it can't be taught. Look at this. This is a challenge you have, Daniela. This is a challenge you have. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about whether you believe about this question of entrepreneurship, can it be taught? And I'm not faulting any of you because when I was in your shoes, I didn't think entrepreneurship could be taught. I just thought you were born an entrepreneur. But let's look at the data on this. Let's look at the data on this. Is it entrepreneurs, well, what are entrepreneurships born? Well, first of all, there's no entrepreneurship gene. There's no entrepreneurship gene. There's no DNA that makes you an entrepreneur, unfortunately. But secondly is entrepreneurs are born into entrepreneurial families. That's just not true. That's what we call in the United States bull stuff. There's no data to back that up. There's no data to back that up. That if your parents were entrepreneurs, you're more likely to be entrepreneurs. There's no data to back that up. People just say these types of things. And then they say, oh, if you're an individualist and you break all the rules, you're more likely to be an entrepreneur. There's no data to back that up. First of all, teams, your individuals, this perception that entrepreneurs are intrepid individuals is not true. Successful entrepreneurship comes from teams. And teams are put together and they have different sets of skills. Let me give you another piece of data that's interesting. We like data at MIT. My first company was Cambridge Decision Dynamics. So my background, just so all of you know, I couldn't understand what Daniela was saying. But I grew up in New York and I went to an arts and crafts school in Boston. And I got an engineering degree, which MIT thinks is hysterical because it's from Harvard. And they think all they do is finger painting there. And so then I went and played basketball for a year in England. I came back and I worked for IBM because I had never heard of the word entrepreneurship. I was probably the most entrepreneurial person in our class, and I hadn't even heard of the word. So I went and worked at IBM. I worked at IBM for 11 years, and I got involved with the personal computer. And then I went back to MIT, and I learned about this thing called entrepreneurship. I took the class that I now teach, that's been taught for almost 50 years now, on entrepreneurship. And I got infected with the entrepreneurial virus, and I said, I'm going to try this. I went out and started a company called Cambridge Decision Dynamics, and if you Google it, you will find out it is in full stealth mode. That means it completely failed. And this is important to understand, because entrepreneurship is about failing and learning from it and going back again. And what we call this in science and engineering is experiments. We run experiments to learn something. It doesn't always work, but we try something and learn from it and adjust and make adjustments. So my first company failed, and that's important to understand, because I think in Mexico, you're a little afraid of failure. It seems like your national soccer team isn't afraid of it, but that's a different story. But you have to be willing to put yourself out there and be uncomfortable, go into places where you could fail and get your nose bloodied and come back the next day. And that's why it's good to have kind of a sports approach to in entrepreneurship, because you're going to have a tough day on Monday, and you got to come back to the company on Tuesday and be ready to go and defeat them on Tuesday with what you learned on Monday when you got beat. So my next company was much more successful. It was called a company called SensAble Technologies. But even then, I made a lot of mistakes. I was probably right 60% of the time and wrong 40% of the time. And that worked out pretty well, but not well enough, because you young people out here, you're really expensive. I have 4 of you, and you're really damn expensive. And so then I did a third company, and that was called Visage Technology. And Visage went from $50 million to $500 million in 2.5 years. Now let me tell you, I didn't get any smarter. There was no new DNA injected into me. I was the same slow white point guard I was before. But what I had learned in those companies got me better and better and better. Am I a statistical outlier? Absolutely not. When you look at the data, people who are serial entrepreneurs get better each time they do it. Not everyone, but that's what the data shows. You get better. So what does that tell you? That tells you that entrepreneurship can be taught. That it can be taught. And I now believe that in my bones. It can't be taught by us just sitting here and here. It can't be just in a room. It has to be through the things you're going to get through the center. That you get the spirit of entrepreneurship through the cultural change. You get the skills in the room and through research. It's data-driven. But then you also get out and put it in the real world in training and get mentors so that it becomes practical and real-world capabilities. But there's no question in my mind. And I'll just tell you one last story that happened the weekend before this one. What is today? Tuesday. It was last weekend. And there was this friend of ours who teaches at Harvard Graduate School of Education, a renowned person, and I really like her a lot. And she said, you know, I'm interested to see your book because entrepreneurship can't be taught. And I said, well, you should read the book. And she goes, but I just know it can't be taught. And so we went through this whole thing about the data. And she goes, well, that's nice, but people were entrepreneurs before your book came out. So why do, you know? And I said, oh, that's true. He said, there were entrepreneurs. And you're right. And guess what? There were teachers before that were teaching well before there was a Harvard Graduate School of Education. So we had to wipe that whole thing out. And guess what? Thomas Edison was doing engineering before there was engineering school. So we had to wipe out MIT too. You get the point. Some people will get entrepreneurship. Some people will get teaching. Some people will get engineering kind of naturally, and they'll learn it, you know, out in the real world. But when we're talking about a large fraction of all of you learning how to be entrepreneurs, it brings up a major problem, and that is entrepreneurship has to be taught at scale. It has to be taught at scale. That's why they're engineering schools. That's why they're teacher schools. It's not because there can't be any teachers. It's not because there can't be any engineers. It's because we have to do it at scale. Why do we have to do it at scale? Well, today, you know, and if you saw it in the Wall Street Journal, I wrote an op-ed. At that bastion of entrepreneurial fervor known as Yale University, that's sarcasm, which is built off the Oxford-Cambridge model that is different, you know, and I went to Harvard, it's the same model. They were training clergy, there was a clergy training people to become in the clergy. The motto at MIT is veritas, truth, knowledge. Knowledge will set you free. That's a totally different model than what we're talking about today. At MIT, the motto is mense manus, which means mind and hand. And why does that make a difference? Because MIT was set up in 1860s to train people for the Industrial Revolution. It is not actually a university. It does not have a law school or a medical school. It trains people to have an impact on the real world, just like what it was set up to do. It was a land-grant institute to have people build things, and that's what entrepreneurship is about. So all of a sudden, this has become in favor. Yale University, 20%. Quebec, 25%, and Quebec is below the national average in Canada. 25% of the young people want to become entrepreneurs. And I just heard the number here was in the MBA program. What was it? How many of the people want to be entrepreneurs? It's over 25%, I think. Someone gave you the number before. That's enormous. That is an enormous number. That's up from 0% when I went to college a long time ago. But, so why is that? Why does everybody want to be an entrepreneur now? Let me ask you all. Why do people want to be entrepreneurs? Why? Independence. I want to be my own boss. I don't mean to pick on you, but if you work if you think that being your own boss is easy, it isn't. It isn't. In fact, when I'm an entrepreneur, I'm my own boss. Not really. I work for the customer, and I work for the board of directors, and I work for my investors. The other one, so there's a little twist to that I'm going to build off in a second. The other one is I want to work my own hours. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you get to work your own hours, all of them. Don't be an entrepreneur because you think it's easy. Don't be an entrepreneur. I'm going to come back to the point here is why you want to be an entrepreneur is because you control your own destiny. And that's what I think we're saying here is you control your own destiny. You don't have to go interview for a job. I always thought it was weird that I felt like I wouldn't do it anymore. I'll go interview for a job because I can create my own job. And I can create a much better job that I want, where I can change the world the way I want to do, than if someone could give me that job. And that's the approach that young people want to take. And they want to have an impact on the world. The other fact that's interesting here is that nothing All of you are well above average here. You're at ITAM. There's no question about it. Nothing will test your skills more than to be an entrepreneur. Any of you who have been an entrepreneur, how many of you have been entrepreneurs here before? You know exactly what I'm saying. Nothing will test your skills more than to be an entrepreneur. It is the hardest freaking job you will ever have, because your boss is in a lot of ways you, and you're going to be harder on yourself than anybody else, hopefully. The other thing that's very interesting now, going back to the data from our good friends the economists give us, is that the jobs aren't being created anymore by government or big companies. The jobs aren't being created in the legal area or the medical area. Where over 2/3 of the jobs are created in the United States between 1980 and 2005 were by new companies. Not small companies, but by new companies. Over 2/3 of the jobs. So if you want to get a job, the best chance for you is to create your own job, because that's what somebody's going to do. So, and I want to differentiate here between what are, I can't help myself, but I'm going to have to do this. This is in the book, by the way. Because when we say entrepreneurship, let me define entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is you go in and you create a new organization where there is none before. And that organization is self-sustaining, and it carries on. It doesn't depend on government handouts. It doesn't depend on subsidies. It depends on you creating value and getting value from somebody else in return that exceeds that, so it's creating something where there was nothing before. But there's two types of entrepreneurship, and I think this is important. This isn't in the slides, but it is in the book. There's what we call SME, small, medium enterprise entrepreneurships. What these companies are small companies that are going to stay small companies. This is people who are addressing local markets, and usually with a service to that local market. These are great things. But what I'm going to talk about now is higher risk. It's something called innovation-driven enterprise entrepreneurship, where there's some underlying innovation that you create, be it a technology, be it a new business model, be it a new process, that allows you to attack global markets. Because when I do that, my growth, in this case, what will happen in a local market is it'll be lower risk because I know the market, but I don't have an underlying innovation, and I'll kind of have linear growth, and then it will kind of tap out at some point. These, you have to take some risk, and this is revenue, and you actually might have some negative cash flow, or you get the cash flow, but then all of a sudden sales will take off, and there's no limit to the upside. Well, there's a limit, but it's a global limit. It's not comparable here. This is what we focus on. And this is what I talk about in the book, and what you should focus on here at ITAM. You can build small nail salons. You can build a pizza parlor. You can build a dry cleaning. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about companies that have an underlying innovation that you can change the world with. And that's innovation-driven entrepreneurship. And today, what I understand is that Mexico has this, but it doesn't have enough of this. And I'm not saying, let me be clear, this isn't bad at all. This is actually very good, but you need more of this to have the right mix of entrepreneurship. And this is a type of entrepreneurship that I'm going to focus on. So does the little thing work now? It doesn't. Do you know anyone from a technology institute that can help with this? So right now, here's the problem. Here's the problem and why you need a center, all right? Really simply, is right now, if we hit the key, entrepreneurship demand for entrepreneurship is skyrocketing. As I was just talking about, we hit the key, it's taking off. It's some places as high as 40, 50% of the new students in school want to become entrepreneurs. But the problem is that our current way that we teach entrepreneurship does not scale well. It does not scale well. Why does it not scale well? It doesn't scale well for a few reasons. And this is rigorous entrepreneurship. Can you hit the key? So the demand looks like this, and the supply looks like this. Does this make our economists happy? There's a gap, and the market doesn't like a gap. So we should scale entrepreneurship education. But the problem with entrepreneurship education is it's first of all, it's contextual. They're working on a hydroponics system. They're working on a battery technology. They're working on a mobile app to share taxis. They're working on a system to empower women in Africa by bringing it. It's all different. So first of all, it's contextually different. Secondly, it's experiential, and you have to get people involved. And third, it's mentor driven. You need it's mentor intensive, and we don't have a great way. That makes it a problem. The second major problem here is that entrepreneurship hasn't been taken seriously as something that can be taught. Business schools have been around for about 100 years. And business schools have really picked up in the past 50 years. And if you want to go to teach at a business school and get tenure, you look for data. And when you do that, you look for data and you look for money. Who's going to sponsor you? And where's that money been coming from? That money's been coming from big companies. And the other thing is, big companies have data. And so if you want to get tenure in a business school or academic institution, you have to do a lot of data-intensive work. And so what that leads to is there isn't a lot of data when you're in an entrepreneurial environment. The situation is chaotic, things are changing, you don't collect a lot of data. You'd much rather go look at Procter & Gamble's pricing or some financial statements for the last 10 years. That's a lot easier. But to understand new product development in an entrepreneurial environment, there's not a lot of data. So the field of entrepreneurship is really in its infancy. There has been some work done, but there's no kind of definitive works out there at this point until disciplined entrepreneurship. That's a joke. Well, it's not actually a joke. That's what I'm trying to do is to get the platform. And so we need to build up this field to be taken seriously. The third problem with entrepreneurship is it's easy to fake entrepreneurship education. It's easy to fake it. And what do I mean by that? I see it all the time. People say, well, I'll just get some entrepreneurs in and they'll tell a story. And then people love the story. And they get all excited. Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And they run off to be an entrepreneur and they don't know what to do. It's like gearing people up for a battle and sending them out to a battle, and they don't have the weapons and they don't have the training to do it. But people are getting paid a lot of money in here right now. There was Donald Trump's Entrepreneurship Institute. They were charging people thousands of dollars to come in and hear some mumbo jumbo from Donald Trump about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And then they put you in a Shark Tank, and that's how you're supposed to learn entrepreneurship. And then they try to sell you some real estate at the end. This is true. Look it up. There's actually being sued for that. But that's not the only one. You can go to conferences now. There's one going on that's going to be going on in San Francisco. They're charging people on average $1,500 to go to learn about entrepreneurship for 1 week. And what do they get? Storytelling, cliched, single tool solutions. They're not getting rigorous entrepreneurship education. And that's a problem. And we're going to see a backlash against this. And this is what I wrote about in the Wall Street Journal. Because people are going to say, oh, entrepreneurship isn't that great. I just spent $1,500 on it, and it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. That's not good for us. As a society, we need to create the jobs, and it's entrepreneurs that create the jobs. We need to solve the intractable problems of education, healthcare, environment, energy, urban transportation, urban space, as I look around in Mexico City. But those problems have been historically solved by entrepreneurs, and they will be again. So we need entrepreneurs, and we can ill afford the backlash. So this is why the ITAM Center is so important, because there is a role for universities in this. Universities need to provide this high-quality, rigorous education that's based on facts and not some bunch of storytelling. We need to have that, and that's best provided by people who are honest brokers and conveners, and that's the role of educational institutions historically, and that will be our role. We will work with the outside players, and there will be lots of them. There will be accelerators like Y Combinator. There will be Techstars. There will be General Assembly. There will be a lot of other things. But the role of the university is a critical role. All right, I have to be careful that I don't run out of time. All right, let's go. So, and that's the challenge we have. How do we scale entrepreneurship education in the next 5 to 10 years while there's this gap before it's filled with a bunch of fraudulent entrepreneurship education? Next slide, please. So, this doesn't mean that that storytelling doesn't have some value, all right? It is critically important for entrepreneurs to have the spirit of a pirate. And this is what we say at MIT all the time. We promote the spirit of a pirate. The first thing I did when I took over the Entrepreneurship Center, the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship, which is similar to what you're getting here, the first thing I did, there was one before that, and it had a bunch of pictures of old white guys up on the wall. I immediately took all them down, and they said, oh, we can make it look good with nice furniture. I said, I want none of that. If you want entrepreneurship, one of the surest ways to kill it is to make the place look like a boardroom, because there's no innovation that goes on in a boardroom. None. And so you have to make it look very, kind of out of the box. And so what we did in our center, as I've seen, is we painted the walls top to bottom with whiteboard. So you can write on the walls all the way to the top. And people write on the windows, and they write on the doors, and you just erase it. And people come and go, and it's a very eclectic place. And we're always looking for those crazy ideas called creative irreverence. Actually, that's what the rest of the world calls it. At MIT, we call it hacking. We call it hacking the system. When everybody else is swimming this way, can you swim that way and outfox them? And we like that. We like people who look at things differently. So that's the spirit of a pirate, and it's a lot of fun when you get it. But you can't be confused that being a pirate is just about being crazy, because, can you go forward? At the end of the day, again, you have to have the spirit of a pirate, but the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. This is the challenge, and this is what you see over and over again when you see great entrepreneurs. They can think differently, but they don't take crazy risks. They take very, very calculated risks. And once they take that risk, they execute fabulously. If you think that Steve Jobs wasn't totally determined once he made a decision, just read his autobiography. He was very, very disciplined. He executed with extreme precision once he decided what he was going to do. And that's what an entrepreneur is about. You scan the landscape, you get something you're really passionate about that's different what other people are doing, and then you figure out, how can I get competitive advantage there? How can I get an asymmetric advantage? And then I bet on that, and I de-risk everything else, and then I just execute like heck. Because in time, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And that's what being a disciplined entrepreneur is all about. Having the spirit of a pirate, but the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. So it's not easy, but that's what you learn when you go from your first company to your second company to your third company. And that's what we want to teach you when you're here at school, is how do we time compress that learning curve to get you up to speed. And a little bit of advice for you is try it while you're here at school. It will never be easier than you're here at school. We do research and we check with all the people who came out of our program. And they say, well, we'd like you to change this course. We wish you had another prize over here. We wish you had fellowship. But the one thing they all agree on is they said, I wished I had started earlier when I was at MIT. I wish I had started earlier. Why? Because you want to get that learning curve when you're at school. You want to crush that learning curve because it's much easier to fail here. You're going to have a better support structure. You're going to have your friends here. You're going to be able to find your team. And finding your team is probably the single most important thing that you're going to do. Ideas are easy. Ideas are cheap. It's execution that's hard. And executing has to do with getting the right team and then having the right process to go through to do that. So let me just give you very quickly. Go ahead. Can we go ahead? You can get it all in this book. And by the way, you can go to this website, disciplinedentrepreneurship.com, and there's going to be a bunch of stuff up there that you can get as well, including free toolkits. Can you go to the next one, please? Okay, so basically what this is, you can just hit them all at one time to keep going, is as opposed to what I was frustrated when I started teaching the course, is there were all these little bits and pieces out there that people had. You know, it was like they tried to build a house, and you had a hammer and a screwdriver and a saw, and then all of a sudden you had a wrench, and then someone came along and said, well, I got an adjustable wrench. And he goes, wow, that's pretty cool, adjustable wrench. Yeah, this is the only tool you ever need, is this adjustable wrench. You say, wait a second, that seems kind of strange. I mean, it's better than the wrenches I had, but what about this nail that's sticking out over here? And the person who's selling me the adjustable wrench says, no problem. You just take the adjustable wrench and put it like this, and you hammer the nail in. You say, wait a second, that makes no sense at all. But the person who's selling you the adjustable wrench will give it some tricky name, and they'll say, and I've got these 5 case studies to do it, but they're incented to do that because they're selling adjustable wrenches. And that's not the right answer. The right answer is to take all the tools and figure out which one fits you the best, and then build a framework in which you pull them in. And so there's a lot of books out here that have good tools in it. And what we're trying to do is pull those together to make a common practice of entrepreneurship. And that's what I'm going to show you on the next page. If you look at the next slide here, you just go, this is a fundamental document. That is my thesis, master's thesis at MIT, that only 2 people ever read. My mother and my advisor, and I think neither of them understood it based on the grade that I got. So this is not working. What? That works. It doesn't go forward though. All right, how about okay. I'll go like this when I want to go forward, all right? All right, so this is the framework that we put together for our classes at MIT. And this is called the 24 steps to launching a new product. But when it went to the publishers, they wanted to call it something else. First of all, they wanted to change the name. I call it Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And they said, we don't like that name. I said, what do you mean? They said, we don't like that word. That word is a word you can't use. I said, what are you talking about? I think entrepreneurship is a great word. They said, no, don't be a wise guy. It's the discipline you can't use. I said, why not? And they said, because that makes people feel like they have to do a lot of work, you know. And I said, well, what are you suggesting the name be then? They said, well, I don't know, but this book called 4-Hour Work Week is just selling like hotcakes. And so I said, I get it. So let's rename the book. We'll call it 6-Pack Abs in 4 Minutes. They didn't like that. I said, forget it. It's my book. We're calling it Disciplined Entrepreneurship. That's the whole point. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur, and we're going to help them with guidance. I don't care if it's a bestseller. We're trying to have an impact on the world. So, but what we're talking about is 24 steps, and what I gave to them was 24 steps to launch, 24 steps to a successful startup. It's really 24 steps to launch a great product, whether you're in a startup or a large company. That's what the title really should be, but that's too long. But it's 24 steps that take you through how you launch a product. And the interesting thing here is when you look at this, is it looks like a human intestine, right? And I know the economists want a straight line, but that's not how. I'll let up on the economists at some point. But just so we're clear, I'm with you, the engineers. Is that it's not a straight line when you're an entrepreneur. It's this winding journey that you go on, but you have to know where to start. You have to know where to start. And within it, there is a lot of iterations that happen. Like we're going to go through here, and when we get to this step, we're very likely going to have to circle back and iterate once or twice. And there'll be a lot of other iterations that you'll see that happen in here. So the first thing is it's not linear. It's kind of this journey you're going to go through. Second thing is there are iterations. And the third thing is it's color-coded. And that's partly because entrepreneurs have a short attention span because they're trying to do so many things. But what we wanted to do was make it easy and accessible. But what we're doing here is we're taking this and we're breaking this 24 steps down into 6 themes. And the first theme, and I'm not going to go through all of them here, I'm going to just tell you the first one because it's really shocking to people because they say, you start with the product or you start with the technology, don't you? And the answer is, we do not. We don't even, you have an idea, and your idea is your idea, and now we're going to validate whether that's a good idea or we're going to invalidate it. And we're going to validate or invalidate that by the one condition, the one single and necessary and sufficient condition for a business. There is one single and necessary condition for a business, and what is that? It is not a paying customer, it is not a business plan, it is not a good-looking CEO, it is not raising money, it is a paying customer. It is a paying customer. So we need to focus on getting paying customers. And so we start, if you can just, that means, who is your customer? And the blue section is all about who is your customer. And this drives people crazy at MIT because they go, you don't appreciate my breakthrough membrane technology for methane crossover. It's 100x better than what anybody else has ever done. I say, I don't care. I don't care. You need to show me who cares, and then I will care. But until you show me who cares, it's not a business. It's a science project. And that's not what we do here at the new center. We create companies. That's what we do. We create new ventures. And if you want to create a new venture, the single necessary and sufficient condition for a business is a paying customer. So we're going to start with that. And so what we do is we figure out who are the potential customers that could use it, which one are you going to choose. So we lay out on the board who are all the potential customers. So you have a new technology. There was one that we were just working on. They have a new memory technology that's better than what people had. So we lay out all the different markets they could do. We don't say no to anything at this point. We lay them all out in a matrix at the top. We say, here are all the potential customers. What that does is, first of all, it gets them thinking not about their technology, but about the customer. And then you're going to build it from the customer back. And what we do then is we then lay them all out and we start thinking about it. And then we say, all right, great, that's nice, but now go do primary market research. Go talk to real customers who will tell you the answer doesn't lie here amongst the debating competition with us. It doesn't rely on you sitting on the internet and looking at reports. I never found a paying customer inside the keyboard, all right? You have to go out and talk to real customers and do primary market research. And that's what they do. And then once they do that, they fill out the matrix, and then they have to choose one, and only one beachhead market to go after. And you say, but why one? Because we don't have a lot of resources, we don't have a lot of time when we're an entrepreneur. So we have to be very, very careful about how we spend it. And so what we do is we figure out what's our best shot. And it might take us a little while, but we don't try to run around and catch 5 rabbits at once. We don't even try to catch 2 rabbits at once. We spend our time, and then we're going to catch 1 rabbit. Because if you try to catch 2 rabbits, you're catching no rabbits. And so once we do that, we figure out who our target beachhead market is, then we build a customer profile, we figure out what the total addressable market is, TAM. Someone once said that should be ITAM. No, that's TAM. And then we figure out which one customer, one very specific customer, this is called a persona, best represents this market. And then we put that customer up and we understand that customer rationally, emotionally, socially. We can finish their sentences. That's when you know you're ready to start understanding about how to build a great company. You've got to walk in your customer's shoes, just like a great actor. And then later on, we're going to validate whether that's the right persona. But once we do this, we have the foundation to start to build a great company. And once we do that, then if we could just go to the next one, then we're going to say, what can we do for our customers? And those are the red steps. And then the next step is, how does your customer acquire the product? Because entrepreneurs, if you want to be disciplined, entrepreneurs get so excited that they can provide great value for their customers that they don't understand or rational about how hard it is to get customers. To acquire a new customer takes a lot of effort. They don't just beat down your door to get it. You have to spend time determining who the decision-making unit, what the decision-making process is, and then how you're going to sell to them. That's the gray. And then the next one is, how do you make money off your product? You'd be shocked that people don't get the unit economics right. They don't get the unit. And I'm not talking about building 5-year financial statements. I'm saying, how much does it cost to acquire what's the marginal cost of acquiring a new customer? And what's the lifetime value of that customer going to be for you once you get going in this? And then lifetime value is the sum of the profits, net present value back to today. This isn't hard to do. But it actually is kind of hard to do because you have to do a lot of primary market research. But the math is very easy. And then the last thing is, we build the product, and we build the product in a very efficient way. And that's how you succeed in entrepreneurship. Actually, I can't guarantee you're going to succeed because entrepreneurship is not an equation. It's not an algorithm. It will just dramatically improve your odds if you follow this disciplined process. So if we could just keep going. They scale your business, keep going. Okay, keep going. Keep going. I want to, keep going. 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 This is a lot more stuff, and I want to get to Q&A. Keep going. All right. This is the last one, and then I want to go to Q&A. Is the process, the book, if you get the book and you go through the process, this is not a problem set that you just sit down and do. It's action-oriented. You have to go out and learn how to talk to customers. You have to iterate regularly. It's not truth will set you free. It's action will set you free. Again, going back to the veritas versus mensa manas, it's action, action. You have to have an impact, and you're not going to do that by sitting around and looking on the internet and making spreadsheets for a long time. You got to get out there, you got to talk to customers, you got to figure out whether it works quickly, then you got to test it and iterate off it. So I could go on because I'm Irish all day, but I'm going to try to stop now and take questions. Can we get some questions from the crowd? Come on now. This is your big opportunity. Yes, in the back. Do you need money to be, well, so one of the things that people get obsessed about before they do these things, the two things you need to start a company you should focus on are getting a great team and then figuring out a great product. And people say, but I need to go raise money. Don't worry about that. The best way to raise money is to have a great team and a great product, and then it's real easy to raise money. Another comment on that. There's a fabulous new way to raise money, and I don't know if you've heard about it down here. You don't even give up equity in your company. And in fact, if you raise money this way, it makes it much easier to raise follow-on money. It's called sales. Sell something to a customer and have them pay you for it. And then develop it, right? I spend so much time counseling entrepreneurs who are so worried about whether they're going to get venture financing or not. Go out and sell something. Fernando's going to chase you down. If you have 100 customers, you don't have to call him. He's going to be chasing you down. By the way, I think another advantage here, by the way, at ITAM, it's just kind of going around, is you have access to money here right within this school. There are a lot of contacts here. Money is not the problem here. When people start talking about, I need money, that's like a smokescreen. If you can execute, if you have a good team and you're committed and you start getting customers, the money will show up. I guarantee you. Right, Fernando? He said he'll fund your business if you do all that. Thank you. What else? Yes.
Are running a company that we are on the
Do I have programs for you?
something like that.
Yes, so we actually do. It's expensive. You can come to MIT. So, no, I might have it here because this is what I'm going down to Brazil tonight to talk about. The first thing I tell you is, look, I don't make, if I told you the amount of money I make on this book, I give away by giving away these posters and stuff. That's not the point here. But I would get the book, and someone has it here. Who has it? You're using it. It's very easy, systematic. And entrepreneurs find it very easy to go back and reevaluate their business. If you really are super gung-ho, there's this class at MIT that you can come take in the middle of January. And there is no better time to come to MIT in Boston than January. You will focus on your studies. But what we do is we start that. And I don't know if you're going to be doing anything in exec ed here. You already are. Okay. So you should talk to, yes. So there's an exec ed class when? So come up here and talk to her or Fernando. Okay, next question. I'll try to go faster.
Why is it so important to have a team if you're an entrepreneur?
So why is it so important to have a team as entrepreneurs?
Because I am an entrepreneur, but I always want to do all by myself.
Right.
And you said that one of the most important things is to have a team. So
yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about this topic?
So if you want to do it by yourself, you're going to end up here most likely, right? And there's a saying by Noam Wasserman at Harvard, Matt Marks at MIT, that says, you can be king or you can be rich, but you can't be a rich king, right? So if you want to be a king and control everything, then you're going to have a nice SME that you're running. If you want to be rich, then you got to give it up and you got to play on a team. So why is it important? Because first of all, today more so than any other time I've seen, it used to be you could have a hacker and a hustler. You had someone who had technical skills and you had someone who had business skills. The hacker is the technical person, the hustler. And you had to have both those. Now someone might be a good hustler, like Steve Jobs was a good hustler and Wozniak was a good hacker. But they did both, a little of both, but their center of gravity was on one side or the other. So it's this mix of skills. The other thing is that it's emotionally hard to be an entrepreneur, which you probably know. And it's so hard, you can't talk to anyone. You're kind of running. You don't know how you're going to make payroll. And this is the nature of it. Anyone who tells you that it's easy to be an entrepreneur, this is bull stuff. I mean, it is just not true. And there's so many times where I didn't know how we were going to get through the situation, but I couldn't tell the company because they would all freak out. But we were going to find a way. And having someone that you can talk to about that and go through the emotional up and downs as an offset is very important. The third thing I would say is this skill set is getting bigger and bigger. I talked about needing a hacker and a hustler. In today's world, you also need a designer. You need someone who knows how to do user experience very well. So we say you need a hacker, a hustler, and now you need a hipster too on your team. Because these artistic people that you thought were just kind of doing kind of crazy stuff, they're actually very important to understand kind of the psychology of how to make an easy to use product. And when you look at Apple, that's the success of Apple. It's not technologically dominant. They are a good hustling company, but it's the design. And you see that over and over again with products today. That's why New York, that's why London, that's why Berlin have all of a sudden become these hotbeds, because they've got a lot of artsy type of people there who understand this kind of gestalt of how do you do digital user experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Bill, thanks for coming to ITAM. My question goes more towards what do you think we are missing in Mexico to get more of this innovation-driven entrepreneurship? Is it people with the technical skills to build them, or is it this kind of centers or venture capital funds that will support the ideas?
First of all, I don't think it's venture capital funds. Let me be clear. I don't think that's it. Because money will flow. If you have a good deal, Fernando will be on your doorstep. By the way, guess what? There's this thing called electrons now, and people will wire you money from the United States. If you're making $10 million and you've got $30 million in free cash flow, people will invest in you. What you might be a little short of is cerveza fria. That's a joke, all right? I think sometimes it's creativity. I mean, that's somewhat of a joke. I think it's the creativity that you need to kind of think outside of the box. I mean, but this is something that I don't have data on. We don't have a huge number of students from Mexico at MIT. We have a good number, but not enough, clearly. But I think it's kind of the creativity and kind of some of the culture which will change. When you take people and they put them in Boston or Silicon Valley or New York right now, you see a transformation in them and that they believe something's possible and they start thinking differently. We joke, I mean, our center is called the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. I joke that we should rename it the Obama Center for Entrepreneurship because the biggest thing we do is get people to say, yes, I can. Yes, I can be an entrepreneur, right? And I think that in Mexico, this part of the center that you saw about culture that was put up is really, really important. And don't underestimate that, because I've seen that. One story, and then I don't know, how much more time do I have? 5 minutes? Okay, I'll tell you a story. First of all, it's not that bad here in Mexico, all right? It's not that bad. I went to Andalusia. How many of you have been to Andalusia, Sevilla? It's a brilliant place, isn't it? In Andalusia, over 90% of the young people want to work for the government. They don't know what to do because the government's not going to create any more jobs. It doesn't create this kind of spirit of a pirate, execution skills of a Navy SEAL. It creates a bunch of people who want to be bureaucrats, right? And Andalusia is having a terrible time. Their economy is just in free fall. And yet, they have to fundamentally change the culture. And yet, when I was there, they took me to a bullfight. And when the person who was a matador did a great job in the bullfight, I guess, because they picked the guy up and they put him on their shoulders and they carried him out after he got 2 ears thrown to the crowd. And I said, that was very interesting. You're celebrating that matador. Why are you celebrating that matador? And they said, we're celebrating that matador because he took great risk. And and he worked very hard to get to this point of excellence. He was excellent, and he worked very hard to get to it. And when the moment came, he rose to the challenge, and he did a terrific job. And I said, that's it. I mean, that's exactly what entrepreneurs do all the time. And yet I don't see you carrying entrepreneurs around on your shoulder. And I'm serious. They say entrepreneurs are taking advantage of other people. With that type of attitude, you're not going to have entrepreneurship. And so Mexico is not that bad, but you can do better when you see it. Entrepreneurs should be celebrated, and I think that's what you're seeing more and more so. Yes? So first of all, let me answer the question that you didn't ask, but is how do you encourage people to think creative? You know, how do you encourage creative irreverence? We have stickers, we do all that, but how do you get them, like after they do all that stuff, how do you get creative irreverence? How do you get people to think kind of wildly in a more systematic way? And you'll be surprised. What we do is we teach improv humor. We teach improv humor because, has anyone here done improv humor? Yeah, what's the first rule of improv humor? Don't say no. You always say yes and, yes and. And so when you're in a brainstorming session, you never say, that's a stupid idea. If someone says, I see green Martians, you say, yes, and I see the green Martians, and they're coming in from the door, and we could monetize them. You know, that's a bit extreme.